So, Pen, this is it, our very first episode of Chit Chat and All That with me, Amanda Prowse.
And me, Penny Dommett. Thank you so much for joining us for your weekly dose of chatter. We're going to talk about all the things that we usually discuss around our kitchen table.
With a cup of tea in hand.
Of course, coffee in my instance.
Or something. Actually, you've got multi-drinks on the go there, Pen. I don't know what that's about. I can see coffee, water, Merlot. No.
Bit early for the Merlot. Bit early.
Later, maybe. But I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about our daily lives, moral dilemmas, the good, the bad and the funny, book recommendations, gardening tips, and a whole lot of laughter and random tangents thrown in. I think we can guarantee a random tangent.
I think there will be many tangents going off in all directions. But that's the whole idea. We want to just chat about all sorts of different things. Some of the things will be a bit more meaningful. Others, where we're concerned, really have absolutely no reasoning behind them whatsoever.
Which tends to be about 40% of our conversations at any one time, I think, Pen.
But I do think what's important is our careers and the jobs that we do form a really important background to everything.
I think we're both workaholics. I think that's certainly, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But we both work all day, every day. If we're not doing it, we're thinking about it. So that's why this sort of time off to chat to you, it's almost like, forced playtime, but it's quite lovely, isn't it? It's a bit of a break.
I think both of our jobs are a bit isolating. I spend a lot of time on my own, either at the drawing board, designing, out in the field, working. And it's so important that you get some time to spend with someone else.
Yeah, and actually that's that sort of isolation aspect I think is really important. I know I have great times of loneliness in my life, and admitting you're lonely often fills me with a little bit of shame. It feels like something I'm failing at if I'm lonely, because I think people who aren't lonely are probably gregarious and have a wide social circle and are invited to lots of things. I feel lonely quite a lot of the time, and so I would like all our listeners to just, pull up a chair and come and join us at the table and hope maybe to combat those times of loneliness that we all have.
And join in. Wouldn't it be lovely if people could actually feel that they can send us some questions, or they can have a comment, or can tell us, why don't we talk about this? I think that'd be absolutely fantastic. So if you possibly want to, get in touch via our Instagram page, The Chit Chatters.
The Chit Chatters.
Send us a question.
Absolutely. Or any feedback.
Anything.
Any feedback or anything they've heard would be absolutely wonderful. So that's it, Pen. We're out the blocks off. Are you nervous, excited, bit of both?
I'm quite nervous because we may run out of things to say. No, we definitely won't run out of things to say. But my greatest joy is having you as a friend and being able to chat about all sorts of stuff. Asking advice, except I don't normally take it.
No, the things you ask me advice on, it's usually just my answers are plucked from thin air or from TikTok. So I, treat it with caution.
Yeah, you normally say, ask Google.
Exactly, for most things. And you're like a human recipe book, which I love. I can phone you up for all things like that, and you've got that information in your noddle.
Well, there are certain things that I have access to, but there are other things that I am absolutely terrible at, and I'm never going to get any better.
I should actually at this point, I feel it's only fair to say that we recorded our entire first episode and I forgot to press record.
Technologically speaking, we definitely are challenged.
We are challenged, and you are right. I think it's also a good time to point out how when we were choosing the name of our podcast, Penny sent me a message and said, because I'm out walking, I'm sending you a voice note with ideas for the name of the podcast, which I thought was very, expeditious of you, Pen, using your noggin and taking the dog for a walk. I thought that was great. I listened to the message and it said, a seat at the table, chatting with Penny and Mandy. Pippin, don't go in there, Pippin. Come back, there's a good girl. Come back, there we go. Good Pippin, stay by my side. And I thought, I don't get it, Pen. That's a very odd title.
And very long.
Before I realised you'd actually not switched off your voice notes and were talking to the dog.
You see, technologically challenged. That is the problem. But I can't wait to ask you lots of questions about your work and your job, because I think people are going to be really interested to hear the nitty-gritty of how Amanda Prowse gets her books published and out on the shelves.
And I think it'd be really nice for people to understand what it's like to be a garden designer, an artist and a gardener. A Chelsea Gold Medal winning gardener, we should point out. You never tell anyone. I tell everyone.
I try not to tell anyone, actually. I know that sounds a bit weird. Yes, definitely Chelsea was a very strange time. I don't tend to tell many people about it because building a show garden is so very different to building a real person's garden. Some people go on when they do show gardens regularly, that's all they do. And they never actually build a garden that's going to stay in situ. Whereas I like to see the gardens grow, literally. I go back to every garden, we go and look after the gardens, and that's what's important for me.
Yeah, and plus you don't need to tell anyone because I do tell everyone. Because I think how many people can say they've won a gold medal at Chelsea? It's like a tiny handful of the entire population, and you did it. So gold standard. I'd be shouting it from the rooftops, or I'd have it tattooed.
Now, there's a good idea. Do you know, my son's always saying to me, why don't I get a tattoo?
Why don't you?
I don't really like the idea of spoiling my beautiful skin.
Do you know what? I get it.
Definitely not. I can remember the first time that I found out my son Joel had got a tattoo. I was devastated.
Were you?
Yeah, I really was. I mean, I've got used to it now because he's got so many. But I really was. I was really upset. Really upset that he wanted to spoil that skin that I'd made for him.
That you made in those 9 months, baking it away with all that toil and effort. You see, I love a tattoo. Oh, I love it.
But you haven't got any, have you?
Not that you know of, Pen. But also, one thing I've said it to you before. If my skin wasn't old and wrinkly and a bit, you know what skin's like when you get post 55. It's all a bit saggy and a bit, maybe that's just mine. I don't know. But I always say, if I had my time again, I see these young girls and women braver than I walking around, and they've just covered in tattoos, and they've got sort of, that it's almost like a land girl look going on with a pair of dungarees and a nice scarf in their hair, and that red lipstick, and I think, they just look like formidable warrior women, and I would love to look like that.
With a tattoo?
Yeah, loads.
So what would you have? You'd have loads,
I'd have loads. I think if I'd started it when I was younger, I would have had loads. But having your first at 56 as I am nearly, I don't know. I think my problem is I don't know what to have. And if you don't know what to have, and then you're going to be stuck with it literally for a very, very long time, it feels a bit risky. I would probably go for arty-farty, quotey type things, which makes me sound like, But I reckon something arty-farty and quotey with something a bit quirky. I like the idea of a typewriter, maybe.
I think a typewriter. Can you imagine?
Olivetti 960 on my back. Not one of those like vintage beautiful ones. I'd like the Olivetti on my back, please, that I learned to type on. In fact, put the hand guard over the keys. It'll save you a few minutes.
Put the box lid down. And it'll just look like you've got a box on your back.
Yeah, maybe this isn't a good idea, but you see, this is why I can't have one.
See, I'd have flowers. I'm bound to have flowers.
Of course you would.
I also love a wren.
Oh,
I do love a wren.
Yeah.
So,
as in a female sailor, or?
Yeah, I'd have a female sailor all the way down my back. Yeah, I think that would be good.
Won't be the first time. I think people,
honestly,
I follow quite a lot.
No respect.
I follow quite a lot of tattoo artists on Instagram, and they are such clever artists.
They really are.
And I think as an artist, you're an artist, you surely must appreciate their art, even if you think it's not
totally.
For you. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it what an incredible job. I mean, to work on the surface of skin, apart from anything else, must be, and having to deal with somebody that's writhing in agony underneath you.
Again, not for the first time. Pen, hello. I'm sorry. That went quickly. We quickly flew off that cliff that we're determined not to fall from. Oh my God. This is where we need 2 seconds to get... Oh, you've smudged your mascara. That's never going to work.
Dear.
I will say, though, that imagine being a tattoo artist. What a privilege. Because that's there forever.
Forever. Do you know, I often think about my gardens. I think, the gardens that we build and we plant. I think the longest that has been left between me designing and planting a garden and then me going back is about 20 years. We went back this year to a garden that I did 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I was so proud because it was still the garden that I designed. There were a few different plants, but basically it was still the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And they still loved it. Absolutely loved it.
That's
Found
really
it very
quite
practical.
moving.
Yeah.
Because you've changed their landscape, you've changed their lives, you've changed the way they feel about their home and the place they spend time in.
Yes. I mean, the garden, if it would only stop raining, as we all know, the garden can be such a special place, such a calm place to sit, reflective, somewhere that you can go to when you need to get out of the house have a different atmosphere. So I do think it's really important to find your space in the garden.
I remember I grew up in flats. You know, my mum and dad lived in flats when we were tiny.
Me too.
And then I lived in flats most of my life, actually. And a garden was a rare and privileged thing, and I never had one. And so going to outside spaces, and I quickly learnt that I didn't need to have an east wing with, a lovely herb planter, although that was my dream. But it was so lovely just to be able to go to a park, Greenwich Park particularly, which was near my flat, just spend time with my feet on the grass. There's something about that, Pen.
I literally was brought up in Bath. We lived in the top floor flat and we lived opposite Hedgemead Park.
Oh, wow.
And even now, I could tell you all the best hiding places, all the best places to go and sit. We used to occasionally take a picnic. Loved it. It was such a special place, even though we didn't really have a garden.
Do you think it informed your decision on your career? Do you think it's because you didn't have a garden and you had this love? You clearly are very passionate about flowers and planting and growing and very knowledgeable as well. But do you think not having that when you were growing up informed your career choice in any way?
No, I think I was very lucky. My grandmother had a garden that we used to love going to because we didn't really have one. And I loved spending time in that garden. She used to allow me to pick flowers, and I used to take all the petals off and create pictures with them and make perfume.
Oh, perfume. Yes. It used to smell like vinegar and roses, didn't it? It was disgusting.
Awful. And then it went slimy, yes. And I really grew my love of gardening from that, I think. And then once I got married, my mother-in-law loved gardening, and consequently, I think it just grew from that, really. And now I am completely addicted to flowers. It's almost feels bad when I can't get my hands on flowers. I feel definitely sadder when I can't get my hands on flowers.
So I should point out that you arrived, as you always do, with some fresh anemones for me. And I said, isn't that something you find under the sea?
There are sea anemones.
But not this variety.
Not this variety. This is a very early spring anemone that we're growing in tunnels.
It's absolutely beautiful.
They are beautiful. And now they're opening. They really look completely different.
We'll take a picture and post that on our Instagram page, Pen, because they are really, really stunning. Thank you, my love, for bringing me flowers. It's just such an act of kindness, isn't it?
Don't you think it's a special thing to be able to take something from your garden and give it to someone else?
I can only imagine, as I've never had the opportunity to do it, but I will, because this year I'm going to grow something.
But do you know what? It doesn't really matter what you've got. It doesn't have to be beautiful, beautiful flowers that you think are fit for a florist. It can be, I've actually picked a whole bunch of weeds and put them all together, and they make a wonderful, wonderful gift. Buttercups.
Is that for people you don't like as much as you like me?
No, it's for people, anybody. Seriously. I mean, at the moment, there's all the lovely May blossom that's out in the hedges. Just have a vase full of that.
Is spring your favourite time of year?
Oh, I love the spring. I love it. I mean, it would be quite nice, as I say, bit of a recurrent theme, if it would stop raining. I have trench foot, webbed feet, given up on any hairstyle I may have had. But it's because of all this rain and because it's been so mild that the flowers are so early this year and everything grows so well. That's why we get our wonderful variety of flowers in this country because of the seasons. So every time you're fed up that it's raining again, just think about the fact that if it didn't rain occasionally, we wouldn't be able to grow roses.
And I know you're very passionate about people buying British flowers.
I am. We have this amazing selection of flowers in this country, but the problem is people want flowers all year round. And so they will buy what they want when they want it. If they could only just think about the seasons and the fact that locally grown flowers are so much nicer, so much better for the environment, more sustainable. Search out someone who grows locally. There are lots and lots of growers all across the country. I belong to a cooperative called Flowers from the Farm. You can look them up online. And if you wanted to give your great aunt a bunch of flowers in Scotland, you find a flower farmer in Scotland near to where your great aunt lives.
Wow.
You can contact them, ask them to deliver flowers down the road to great auntie, and hey presto, we're using local flowers.
I had no idea that was even possible.
Yeah. Flowers from the Farm.
I love that, Pen. And also, I find that sometimes flowers are so expensive that actually a small local grower, even someone, we have lots of, you and I live very close to each other, and we have an abundance, don't we, of people with small sort of stalls and small holdings outside their door, their gate, their garage, saying, help yourself. They're selling their flowers. Well, that's just as lovely, isn't it? Go there. And
even more lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would prefer to have 4 small flowers from a garden that you've grown than a massive bunch of chrysanthemums that have come all the way from Ecuador or Ethiopia or Kenya.
Yeah, and it quite staggers me that they're able to import those flowers and still keep them fresh. But I know there's quite sort of unpleasant science behind that, isn't there?
Yes, a lot of chemicals involved, unfortunately. The majority of flowers that are imported will have been grown in conditions to make sure that they still look fresh when they get to you. Whereas if you're buying locally grown flowers, the chances are they're grown in a wildlife-friendly environment. They haven't gone very far at all, so they're very fresh. Just search someone out. It's really easy. Go on Instagram, use the hashtag flower grower, local flowers, that sort of thing, and it's amazing who you will find.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, obviously grew up in the East End of London, and my nan and granddad had a sort of, as we all did, a sort of small square plot, which they grew vegetables in, they had a fruit tree in, they even post-war had chickens in. I mean, unbelievable, but everyone did. And I can remember my granddad growing chrysanthemums.
Amazing.
And they were his pride and joy. And they were vast. They were these huge, blousy-headed blooms, these vast balls of absolute compacted delight in the most incredible shades of maroon and purple and wine. And they were absolutely stunning, or yellow. This big, almost like the sunshine. And they would cut them and put them on the table when we had a buffet on a Sunday night, which was the treat of the week.
Oh, the buffet.
The buffet.
Yes.
The buffet.
We didn't have buffets very often, I have to say.
Well,
I don't know. I think what it is I'm not terribly keen on sharing my food.
This I know. I've seen you when we actually get a takeaway delivered. I know the way. I've seen you pull your dishes towards your plate, almost with, like at school, if you're worried someone's going to nick a chip, you have to build a wall with your arms while you're eating. I've seen you do that with your chicken tikka masala, Pen. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, no, you are right. You are right. I'm not very, I don't like the idea of a double dip.
Oh, yeah, you're very generous in every other capacity, I should point out, just not when it comes to your Peshwari naan.
I'm quite happy to share mine, but I don't like the idea of everyone sharing from the same dish. And also, what is it about buffet that people go mad?
Oh, they do.
They just put they pile high their plates.
They do.
I just don't understand it.
I've even seen strategists who will actually show you how to build a side wall with cucumber and maybe, the odd sausage roll or a bit of gala pie, and then stack coleslaw and things behind it. There's mass science to it, Pen, to make sure you get the optimum load.
Well, our go-to for a buffet, we do a buffet quite often Boxing Day. That's the sort of buffet day, isn't it?
Once a year? That's when you...
Yeah, we don't do it very often.
Oh.
No. And my go-to is a sausage plat.
Oh, Pen, I think we made sausage plats in home economics when I was about 14.
No, it wouldn't be the same as my sausage plat. I have to say, it is like a glorified sausage roll.
Yeah.
But it just looks very pretty.
Home ec, we used to eat it all on the bus on the way home. So my poor mum, I mean, there wasn't a lot of cash knocking around. She'd have to find the money for the ingredients. I'd go to school and make it, and then all my mates would eat it out of a tin on the way home.
Do you remember those baskets? Did you have a basket to put your home ec in?
Yes.
And you had those covers that had the little gap in the middle for your handle.
It was a waterproof cover.
Yes.
I can picture it now.
Yes,
it was brown
I can
and orange.
too.
Mine was with daisies on.
Yeah. I remember we made mashed potato once. It seemed to be a bit of a silly idea.
You made mashed potato?
Yes.
That's
in
lazy
home economics.
teaching. Lazy teaching, Pen.
I mean, who has to be taught to peel a potato?
Although I did phone my mum on Sunday morning and said, I want to do some make mayonnaise, obviously, for said buffet that we did. And I said, how long do you boil an egg for? She said, how old are you? I said, 56. Is that relevant? I didn't know if it was an age thing. Like the older you are, the longer you have to boil your egg. And she was just making the point that I should know how to do it.
I think you really should know how to boil egg by the time you get to your age. We have work to do, Mandy. We have work to do.
Thing is, Pen, it's like everything, isn't it? If you've never been shown, how do you know?
It is incredible. I mean, the very few things I have learnt about your life since we've known each other. We will talk about how we met one day.
We will.
That's a whole episode in itself.
It's a very funny story.
It is a very funny story. But I can honestly say I had never met anyone who wrote stories for a living. And one of the first things I said to you, I felt such an idiot because I said, oh, hello, and who are you? And what do you do? And you said, I write books. And I thought, I must have misheard. Nobody, who does that? Oh, okay. And, oh, yeah, have you written many? And you proceeded to tell me all the different books that you had written then. And I just find it fascinating that somebody puts all these stories down onto paper. I just don't know how you do it. And each book is so different. I love it. I have just finished Very, Very Lucky.
Oh.
I loved it. Oh. I absolutely loved it. So many strands all interwoven. And I mean, you know that I don't read every single book, but I loved that one.
Thank you, Pen. That means a lot to me, actually. Thank you. I'm happy.
We do have a bit of an issue with the names in your books.
Well,
though.
When you say we have an issue, very often I will have an idea for a book and I will say to Pen, oh, I've got this great idea for my next book. And I might run it through you in, just a tiny 2 minutes over coffee. And you'll say, you've called them what? And I say, well, this is the names. And you go, oh, I don't like that. Or, oh, I do like that. And you're quite emphatic about it. And one book in particular, I think it was The Food of Love, which is a story about a family when anorexia comes to live in their house, when their young daughter is suffering with this terrible illness. And really it's their different views on how they think they should all handle it and what actually happens. A book that's quite hopeful, even though it's quite a dark topic. And I can remember you reading it and saying, oh, I'm loving it. But the father is called Lockie. What a terrible name. And you found it hard to get past that, didn't you?
Was I really that tactless?
Yeah, I think you were. Let's say honest, Pen. It's not tactless. We're at that stage where we can be very honest.
Rude. Just rude.
Rude.
But on the other hand, Merrin. Oh. How beautiful was Merrin?
Merrin
with her bare feet.
Oh, was that from To Love and Be Loved?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, I love that book. Cornwall, that's Merrin.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was such a beautiful name. Isn't it odd how names really give us an idea as to the character before we even start? Do you think about the name before you think about the book?
It's really funny. I usually get the title first, which can actually, the only thing about my books that change before they go to print is sometimes the title for a million reasons, not all of them within my control. But I usually then see the main character and I get an image of her in my head and she comes with a name. And it's almost like the two things happen together, almost like when you look at that baby and you think, oh yeah, that's definitely a Trevor.
And Nigel.
Is Trevor still?
Trevor's quite often used for a dog these days, isn't it?
Is it?
Oh, yes, very popular. Trevor and Norman, apparently.
Oh, Norman. I've actually met a dog called Norman.
Yes.
He was a bit snappy, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, no, so my characters come almost fully formed the way they look with their names. And I think until I've got that nailed down, until I know everything about her and I can see her, And I know what she has for her breakfast and where she went to school and her likes and dislikes and what makes her scared and what motivates her and makes her happy. I think it's really hard to get the book to work. I think I need that in place because that's the first building block for me.
Are there any names that you haven't used yet that you
So
think,
many.
I'm desperate to write a book? Please don't ever make a Penelope.
I think I've had a Penny who was a gardener.
You did?
I did.
Head gardener.
Just to make you laugh. I
Yes,
put that in.
you did.
Yeah. Did it make you laugh?
It did make me laugh.
There you go.
I shrieked. I was reading in bed and I shrieked. So are there any that you definitely wouldn't use?
I think I wouldn't use names of people I know and love because I think they'd think I was writing about them and clearly I'm not. Although I have used a couple in sort of maybe minor characters, but no, I wouldn't do that. And I have a secret list of names. Well, it's not secret now, is it? I'm telling you about it. But I have a list sort of just in my notes that I keep. And if I hear an interesting name, particularly if ever I hear one or, in a song or I'm reading a newspaper article. But I have to say my best source of names will come as no surprise to you. Gravestones.
Do you literally wander around?
Yeah.
Gravestones?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're
this
saying
is
it's
something.
you're saying it's like it's a bad thing, Pen.
Well, I can think of other ways, like reading a newspaper.
But the names, historic names, are just, there's something so beautiful. And the way they weren't afraid to string them all together, Corey, Mary, May, Elizabeth. And it's like, oh, hello, this is wonderful, I'm having that. Or whatever it might be. I just feel they're inspired and different. And I just love to hear about their little lives. So those little 4 or 5 words on a gravestone, for me, are as good as any novel. In fact, my granddad always used to say, and it still makes me laugh now, where do they bury all the rubbish husbands? Because they only bury beloved, lovely and kind ones. And I thought, hello, Joe, you're onto something there. That still makes me laugh now. But and I think when you look at the time they lived, their whole life, you are in a position to sit and look at the dates of their whole life. The same with benches you see, people's memorial benches, at seaside places or beauty spots or whatever. I'd love to know the story behind them. And I find it quite a great reminder that it is just a tiny little blip that we're here for.
Don't you think as well it's really odd how names go in waves? So we're almost back to the old-fashioned Ivy and Ethel and that sort of name.
So what was the most common name in your class at school?
Oh, lots of Janes.
Janes, yeah.
Emma, I seem to remember. There were quite a few Emmas and lots of Nicholas.
Yeah, we had Nicholas and lots of Lisas.
Oh, right. The other thing that I find interesting is I've never, ever been in a class with another Penny.
Have you not?
No. I've only ever met one other Penny.
Who was that?
Her name was Penny Skinner, and we actually played badminton together. We were an indomitable force.
You were a domitable force.
Ha, ha, ha.
See what I did there, Pen?
I do.
Yeah.
But that's the only other Penny I've ever known, ever.
I've never met another Mandy. I meet him everywhere.
I've never met another Mandy quite like you.
I will take that as the compliment it's intended. Yeah, Mandy's are everywhere. And it's always Amanda Jane. If you're born in the 60s, it's Amanda Jane. But Jane was sort of the middle name that went with all our names. Samantha Jane or Claire.
Yes.
Or Louise.
Yes.
Claire, Louise or Jane. They were our middle names mainly, weren't they?
I wonder why. Does it sort of make a name flow better?
I think maybe it does, and maybe it was just fashion.
And
Plus, they're nice names. I love those names, actually.
The double-barreled names now.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
The
definitely.
Ivy Blue.
Ivy Blue, yeah. So why, if you had to name your boys now, would you go for the same names you went for?
Yes, I still really like their names. Interestingly, did you, in the days when they were born 30 years ago, we didn't know what sex the baby was going to be.
No.
So you sat there had to think of a girl's name and a boy's name. So Benjamin was going to be Eloise.
That would suit him, I can see.
Yes.
He's got gorgeous eyes. He's got Eloise eyes. Yeah.
Eloise. Yeah. I don't know where I got that one from. And
Is it The Damned?
But could be. Yes, is that what they sang?
Yeah.
I'm not going to break into song.
Please don't.
And Joel was going to be Charlotte. So I'm really glad that I didn't call him Charlotte.
I think it'd have been a lovely Charlotte. Lose the beard maybe, but a lovely Charlotte. I think that would have been lovely. So I always was going to name Joshy after my granddad Joe, whose name is Josiah. So my grandpa was Josiah the second, and my Josh is Josiah the third. So it just runs through the family. And I never even gave it a second thought. It was like, he's going to be Josiah and we'll call him Joe or Josh. And Joshy sort of stuck. Although he now goes by Josiah much more, particularly for work and things. It's quite interesting.
It's interesting how if you give your child a name, so it's my grandson, his name is Monty.
No, his name is Most Marvellous Monty.
Most Marvellous Monty. But his full name is Montgomery. And I always think if he turns out to be a solicitor or a surgeon, he could be Montgomery quite easily.
Whereas if he's a dustman or whatever he wants to be.
Or a pop star.
Or a laid-back surf kind of dude.
Yeah,
he's going to be a farmer Penny. He's going to be a farmer Penny. I hate to tell you now, but that's it.
He could be Monty. So I think there's benefits of giving them a name that can actually cover all eventuality.
Yeah, I think that's it. But I think you've got much more freedom now with names, which I really like. We're not constrained by the sort of convention of our youth, which you had to have a certain name within a certain parameter. And I think now there's so many names that are gender neutral, so many names that are old-fashioned, and no one says, oh, that was the name of my grandma, fancy calling them that. Instead, it's welcomed, carrying on that heritage. It's wonderful.
Definitely. And I think it's really ageing when you're given a name that fits into a certain time.
Yeah, like mine, actually. Mandy's very much of the late 60s and 70s.
Do you think there are many Chardonnays that worry that they had a difficult time because of their name?
I think we all think we have a difficult time because of our name. You either love... I think most people I know go through phases of loving and hating their name at different times in their life. So I've always liked having a name that just means I am middle of the pack. No one really remembers it. It doesn't stand out in any way. It's just Mandy. That's it. Mand and Mandy, and that's it.
Why do people decide to have a pen name when they write then?
That's a very good question. They may be writing about something that is maybe slightly controversial. They may have another job that they don't want to be identified as that writer. So, for example, if you are a lawyer and you are writing about criminal cases, something you may take the slightest detail from your real life from, you don't want to give that away. You might write something that's a bit more salacious and you don't want your neighbour next door to know you're writing about bum bumps. The Bum Bum Book.
Because, of course, back in the day, women didn't feel that they could write books, didn't they?
No, they couldn't, absolutely.
I mean, was it because they wouldn't get published?
Yeah.
Or people didn't take them seriously? Or
all of that. I think the reason for that, Pen, is probably because back in the day, women were very much seen and not heard. You weren't allowed to have a profession. You were very often seen as an extension of your husband's, household. You weren't allowed to vote, still aren't in a lot of places. There was no equity in life whatsoever. Your husband held the purse strings, did the accounts. Your circle, your world and your horizon was very small. So in the 1800s, if you wanted to write, and there are some phenomenal women writers from that time, you had to really break that glass ceiling, Virginia Woolf and others. But it kind of makes them even more determined and even more special, doesn't it?
I find it really interesting that you can pick up a book. I was one of the very last to realise that Robert Galbraith wasn't Robert Galbraith. I was thinking it was a wonderful new author that had come online to these sort of mysteries. So I was the very last to know that it was anything to do with J.K. Rowling.
I find that really interesting because it was sort of this big mystery and no one will know who Robert Galbraith was until Robert Galbraith wasn't selling very well. And suddenly it gets leaked that it's J.K. Rowling. It's like, oh, hello. It's quite, I don't know, make of that what you will. But I kind of think anything in life that you have to almost fight for becomes so much more precious, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. But very controversially, we made both the boys buy their own first cars. We didn't, obviously through the years we gave them a bit of money to put into the car fund, but we didn't just go out and buy a car for them. And I honestly believe that it made them look after it a lot more. If they couldn't afford to run it, they shouldn't have had one.
I'm laughing, Pen, because you're saying controversially you made your boys but buy your first cars. I think in my family, it was you were lucky if you were given a driving lesson. You know what I mean? There just wasn't that money around. There just wasn't. So if you wanted it, you had to go and get it yourself, you know. And I think borrowing things, like my dad used to borrow his dad's car to go off on jaunts with my mum and things like that. And it meant so much to be trusted with that most precious of thing. But the idea of owning one yourself was, that was just light years away.
And do you remember that wonderful feeling of actually saving up and really, really wanting something so much? And then when you finally get that opportunity to get it, it was so amazing. We don't really do that now, do we?
What was the thing that you saved up for and then got?
Well, this is a wonderful story, actually, dear listener. When I was little, I always wanted a Barbie.
I remember you telling me this.
I was desperate for a Barbie. All my friends had Barbies. I didn't have a Barbie. I was desperate for one. And no, I wasn't allowed to have one. No, couldn't afford the clothes for it. Definitely couldn't have one. So I spent my life thinking I'd really missed out because I didn't have a Barbie. I wanted the Barbie with the horse, surprisingly, and the stable, and the rack of clothes, and the riding helmet, all of that. So anyway, last Christmas, Mandy said, I've bought you something that I know you're going to love. And I opened it up, and it was my very own Barbie with red hair. Needless to say, I burst into tears. It was a bit late, but hey, 50 years too late, but I got my Barbie in the end.
You did. Have you played with her?
Monty and I spend many a time taking her clothes on and off.
Well,
yes.
Good. And
yes.
Also, she did come with her chicken coop and some hens and some eggs.
Yes, we play often with that.
Yeah, love that. No, you're welcome. And that was my pleasure. I'm really good at buying presents.
You are very good at buying presents.
Yes, I don't always remember when birthdays are, but when I do, I really go for it. It's great. Do you know what, Penny? That has been absolutely lovely. I've been really enjoyed chatting to you today.
It's been a wonderful morning. Thank you for the coffee.
Oh, you're welcome. And I hope everyone has enjoyed listening to Chit Chat and all that. We will have our next episode up, same time next week from wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope you have enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed chatting. How can people get hold of us, Ben?
Just contact us on Instagram at The Chit Chatters.
Thank you so much. Until next time, take care.
Bye.